Lavender Castle, a place of legend, fabled right across the universe. This is our quest to find it.
Lavender Castle, Double Cross. Inside the dark station, Dr. Agon was talking to his pet falcon Trump. He had just returned from a reconnaissance mission and had news to report on the spaceship Paradox's whereabouts. "Did you find the Paradox?" asked Dr. Agon in his sinister voice.
"I searched everywhere," replied Trump, "and I couldn't find it."
Dr. Agon sighed at the fact that his one minion had failed him once again. If the flock won't go to the meadow, he thought out loud, the meadow will have to come to the flock. He then turned to Trump. "Tell the Dark Station to set a course for the planet Festal," commanded Dr. Agon. Festal was a barren planet, with no civilization or trade to be seen for miles around, save for a junkyard run by two aliens, Twaddle-Dim and Twaddle-Duff. And it was Twaddle-Duff who Agon would encounter on his visit. Agon was lucky, as the shady-looking dealer had no idea who he was dealing with just yet.
"Good morning, Squire,"
greeted Twaddle-Duff.
"How can I help?"
"I'm looking for an MD646 engine," inquired Dr. Agon politely. "I know they're rare, but I'm offering a high price." He knew that people like Twaddle-Duff were easily swayed by pesos, currency similar to the English pounds that you and I might use, so he produced some.
"Oh, really? And how high is—"
Twaddle-Duff began, pausing when he saw the many pesos Dr. Agon had in its hand.
"Well, I do know of an old thatched cottage with jet engines that has one,"
said a tempted Twaddle-Duff.
"I think it's called the Puzzle Box."
"You mean the Paradox?" interrupted Dr. Agon with fake intrigue. "Do you know where it is?"
"I don't,"
replied Twaddle-Duff.
"but I can call them. I'm sure I can make them, shall we say, part with their engine."
Agon, pleased that his plan was coming together, slipped a small piece of paper into Twaddle-Duff's lapel. "Give them this message," he said, "and they'll come running to me, us." After Agon had taken his leave, Twaddle-Duff looked at the message his latest customer had left him. It read,
"I have information about Lavender Castle for you. Yours, a well-wisher from Festal."
The Paradox itself was flying through the space skies, continuing its quest to find Lavender Castle. Inside, Captain Thrice was talking to someone on the ship's transvision. "I see," he was saying. "Very well, I'll think about it." Captain Thrice closed the conversation with a simple "goodbye." He then told Roger that he had been talking to somebody from the planet Festal.
"Why'd they call us, Captain?"
Roger asked. "Because they claim to have information about Lavender Castle," explained Captain Thrice. "We may as well go down there to get this information, and supplies as well." So, Roger began to pilot the Paradox to Festal. Meanwhile, inside the mammoth machine, Trump was confused about Dr. Agon's seemingly complicated, to him anyway, plan. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't put the pieces together.
"I don't understand why you want that engine,"
he said to his master. "What you don't understand, you imbecile," replied Dr. Agon, "is that the engine is merely the bait."
"The bait?"
asked a further confused Trump. For the second time that day, Dr. Agon sighed. Why was it that his 1 minion had to have a brain the size of a peanut? Where was a trap door when he needed one? Yes, said Dr. Agon reluctantly. The bait in my trap. I'm going to catch the Paradox and all its crew just like that, he continued, cracking his knuckles, much to Trump's disgust. At the same time, the Paradox was making its descent onto Festal. It touched down on the rocky surface, and its crew waited to meet their mystery informant. Sproggle, on the other hand, was focusing on what he could see through his telescope, through the wrong way as usual.
I see a rock,
he announced to the rest of the crew, who weren't listening.
and there's another rock.
Ooh, and... Okay, Sproggle, interrupted Leica. We get the picture. Captain Thrice looked around to see if he could find the informant. This is the planet we were supposed to meet him on, pondered Captain Thrice. But I can't see him. Suddenly, a mysterious alien-shaped cloud appeared in the Paradox. When it cleared, who should it leave behind but... the informant. It was Twaddle Duff. He made his presence known with a cry of,
Good afternoon, squires and squiresses. Duff's the name. Selling rocket engines is my game.
Twaddle Duff then got down to business, as he always did with every one of his customers.
Now, I'm looking for an MD646 engine,
he announced. Isambard, excited to meet someone who could possibly be a fellow engine enthusiast, cleared his throat and said,
We have an MD646. Well, I could swap my information about Lavender Castle,
began Twaddle Duff.
for your engine.
Isambard, in turn, began to see that this alien who'd entered the Paradox without an invitation to add to that might not have been the engine enthusiast he initially hoped he was.
My engine is the best in the universe,
Snapped Isambard.
and you're not going to take it away from me.
Even Twaddle Duff, normally unfazed by this sort of behaviour, was taken aback.
It must be a very nice piece of metal if you're that passionate about it,
he said nervously.
Could I see it?
Isambard thought for a moment. Could he and the rest of the crew trust this unscrupulous being?
Well,
thought Isambard out loud. There was silence, broken a few moments afterwards by Isambard agreeing, if somewhat cautiously.
all right.
Elated, Twaddle Duff hopped, for he only had the 1 foot, towards the engine room.
But don't touch any of the brasswork.
Called out Isambard following him.
I've just polished it.
But when Isambard and Twaddle Duff got to the engine room, there was an unpleasant surprise awaiting the engineer, or rather, not awaiting him, as the something that was usually there had disappeared.
It's gone! My engine's gone!
Shouted Isambard in disbelief.
How could it have gone? It weighs a ton!
A suspicious-looking Twaddle Duff turned to Isambard.
Sorry, mate. No engine, no information,
he said, feigning sincerity.
I'll be hopping off then.
And he started the long and arduous journey from the Paradox back to his junkyard. When Twaddle Duff had gone, Roger came in. He had heard the commotion from outside the engine room.
Oh, great!
Sighed Roger.
No supplies, no logs, and now no engine!
Back at the junkyard, Twaddle Duff saw that Dr. Agon had made a return visit. He'd come to collect the engine, and wanted some way of putting it into the mammoth machine without too much effort required. Could you load it for me? Asked Dr. Agon.
Not a problem at all, sir,
replied Twaddle Duff. The mysterious cloud that had appeared in the Paradox appeared once again, this time enveloping the engine, and frightening Trump away in the process. When the cloud cleared, the engine was nowhere to be seen. That was because the engine had reappeared in the mammoth machine. Twaddle Duff had teleported it into the craft. Teleportation, said an intrigued Dr. Agon. This time his intrigue was very real. So that's how you acquired it. With those words he left. Well, he would have left had Twaddle Duff not stopped him.
Excuse me, Gov,
said Twaddle Duff firmly.
but What about my money?
He wasn't going to let his latest customer go without paying easily. Your reward comes from having had the honour of serving me, hissed Dr. Agon. Dr. Agon, destroyer of planets and terror of the universe! Undeterred, Twaddleduff took a stand.
If I'm not paid, I will take the goods back,
he bravely told the villain. Not one to be told otherwise, Dr. Agon bit back. You wouldn't dare, threatened Dr. Agon menacingly. Twaddleduff's brave facade slipped almost immediately.
No, I wouldn't,
he gulped. Back in the paradox, things were quiet. Too quiet. And it was Sproggle who quickly raised the alarm when he heard a familiar, angry trumpet.
It's Dr. Agon's mammoth machine!
cried Sproggle. The paradox's doorbell then rang, and Dr. Agon's picture appeared on the ship's transvision. Agon calling, announced Agon. What do you want? Asked Captain Fry sternly. I've often fancied having a weekend cottage, said a sly Dr. Agon.
With a nest for me and the thatched roof,
interrupted Trump. Yes, thank you, Trump, Dr. Agon snarked. And it just so happens that your ship is in a hopeless position. Again, there was silence. Even Leica and Isambard, the smartest members of the Paradox crew, were perplexed by what Agon meant. That means you must surrender the Paradox, continued Dr. Agon. If you don't, I will destroy you. Now the crew understood, and Captain Price wasn't going to go down without a fight. He turned to his crew who were gathered in the lounge. Do we surrender or fight on? He questioned.
I'm with you, Captain,
answered Roger.
So am I,
responded Isambard.
And me,
replied Leica.
I shall be at your side, Captain,
added a nervous Sir Squeakalot.
What was the question?
asked Sproggle innocently. Pleased that he had gained the crew's courage, Captain Price turned back to face Agon on the transvision. Here's our answer, Agon, said Captain Price with a look of determination. We would rather be destroyed than surrender to you. All right, Price, snarled Dr. Agon, if that's the way you want it. He pressed his finger on the missile launch button, and missiles started firing straight towards the Paradox. The Mammoth Machine's missiles hit Vestal's rocky surface, rocking the Paradox this way, that way, and the other. One missile even knocked Roger off his feet, and he landed near Sproggle's desk.
Oh, that was close,
said Roger sarcastically. It seemed like Dr. Agon's ultimate triumph was nearly at hand. All he had to do was fire one more missile, and the Paradox would surely be destroyed.
Destroy them!
urged Trump. That, my pet, drawled Dr. Agon, is exactly what I am about to do. His finger hovered temptingly over the button. Watch for the white flag, Trump, he snickered. Back in the Paradox, Roger was resigned to his fate, as were the other crew members.
I think the next one's got our name on it,
Roger called out. And that was when the mysterious alien-shaped cloud appeared once more, again leaving behind Twaddleduff in its place. He had teleported into the Paradox, and just in the nick of time too.
Don't panic, everyone. I can teleport, see?
Revealed Twaddleduff.
Now let's get out of here.
Captain Price stared at Twaddleduff in disbelief. Was he mad? Just to be on the safe side, he asked, But how can we do that without an engine? Twaddleduff put his hands upon his chest and closed his eyes as Isambard hurried down to the engine room. Simultaneously, the mysterious cloud appeared in the Mammoth Machine again and engulfed the stolen engine. Dr. Agon could not believe it when he saw that the engine had disappeared. Oh no! Was all he could say. Isambard, meanwhile, had gotten to the engine room and was more than delighted to be reunited with his engine. He rushed to it and cradled it as if it were his baby to try and make it start.
Come on, baby! Please, start for Daddy!
Pleaded Isambard. He was unaware that the Mammoth Machine was getting closer, So when he heard a cry of
Hurry, Isambard!
from Roger, he knew he had to coax power up without delay. Isambard was lucky to get help, as another mysterious alien-shaped cloud appeared and left behind what seemed to be Twaddleduff, but wasn't. It was his twin brother, Twaddledim, but Isambard didn't realise this just yet. Twaddledim picked up Isambard's hammer and struck the engine just as Dr. Agon fired his last missile. The Paradox took off at once and soared into the space skies away from the mammoth machine. Dr. Agon was furious. He reckoned that more drastic measures were needed if he wanted to catch the Paradox, so he immediately went after the thatched cottage with jet engines. As the mammoth machine ascended from the atmosphere of Festal, Dr. Agon adjusted the ship's telegraph and launched a projectile that Captain Thrice immediately recognised. "It's a leech bolt," called Captain Thrice. "If it locks on, it'll stick like...
Like a leech, Captain?"
interrupted Roger. Captain Thrice could sometimes forget what he was saying, so it was a good job he had Roger to help him.
"Hold tight, everyone!"
Roger shouted to the rest of the crew. Dr. Agon knew that the Paradox wouldn't be able to outrun something as fast as a leech bolt as soon as it locked onto them. So, when it did, he was elated. "It's locked on! They can't escape!" he said with sinister delight. No matter how hard he tried, Roger couldn't escape the leech bolt's tail.
"I can't shake it!"
he shouted. Captain Thrice couldn't do much about it either. "Agon's finally got us," sighed a melancholic Captain Thrice. But Twaddleduff didn't seem worried. He simply put his hands on his chest, and another mysterious cloud surrounded the leech bolt. When the cloud disappeared, so too had the leech bolt. The threat was over.
"It's okay, we're safe now,"
announced Twaddleduff as the crew regained their bearings.
"which is more than I can say for that Dr. Agon bloke."
What Twaddleduff meant was that in the process of teleporting the leech bolt away, he had also teleported away the mammoth machine. Dr. Agon and Trump were now plummeting 800 feet towards the ground of the planet Festal. They landed on the rock-hard surface with a loud thud. Captain Thrice looked out of the Paradox's front window to see what was happening down below. He could see Dr. Agon ranting at Twaddleduff, who was now beside Captain Thrice.
Give me back my machine!
Dr. Agon was roaring. Captain Thrice considered for a while. Knowing what would happen, he nodded to Twaddleduff, who put his hands upon his chest again. The mammoth machine reappeared, but it was now plummeting towards the ground, just as Dr. Agon and Trump had done. The two villains could watch and only scream,
"No!"
as it landed smack on top of them. They were more annoyed than hurt, as it would be a little while yet before they could catch up with the crew of the Paradox again. "Oh, blast," muttered Dr. Agon. Some time later, Isambard was talking to who he thought was Twaddleduff, but was actually Twaddledim, as he would find out presently.
"So,
began an impressed Isambard.
where did you learn the hammer trick?"
"Well, sometimes these old engines need a little gentle pushing," replied Twaddleduff as he hit the engine again.
"Hold on, I thought you were in the lounge."
Isambard queried, still thinking he was talking to Twaddleduff. It was at that very moment when Twaddleduff himself teleported behind him. Isambard looked this way and that, and the penny dropped.
"They're twins!"
gasped Isambard to himself. Isambard thought it best to bring the twins with him up to the lounge so they could explain everything and make their apologies.
"You see, he's Twaddledim,"
said Twaddledim. "And he's Twaddleduff," continued Twaddledim. The Twaddle twins, as they were known by most, then hopped together and joined hands.
"And when we're together, we're called Dimduff,"
they simultaneously stated.
"We're sorry we borrowed your engine. We will make it up to you."
And putting their hands to their chests once more, they disappeared. Just as soon as they had disappeared, Sir Squeakalot, who hadn't had much to do today, came in from the kitchen alcove, holding a pile of logs.
Captain Fry, sir.
began Sir Squeakalot in surprise.
The locked door is completely full.
Sproggle, too, was surprised. He could see the no longer mysterious cloud appearing in the paradox, leaving behind some supplies in its wake.
I see supplies,
said Sproggle in delight. I think they're sorry for what they did, said Captain Thrice with a stern but polite tone. But, after all, they are just common thieves. As the planet Festal disappeared from the paradox's view, Captain Thrice couldn't help but think about their experience with the Twaddle twins. All the same, he thought quietly to himself, they were nice thieves. Very nice thieves, to be honest. And he chuckled to himself as the paradox flew through the space skies once more. The next story is called The Black Swat. A storm was brewing near the planet of Skull. Why it was called that I'll tell you later, which meant bad news for the pirate ship known as the Cutting Snark, for it was sailing on the part of the galactic sea that was near the planet. It was Short-Thread Led's robot parrot Ting Lizzie who alerted him to the storm.
Snakes alive! Snakes alive!
She was saying. The space pirate peered through his telescope and could see electrical disturbances occurring through the storm clouds.
Scuttle me bones! I'm not sailing into that!
exclaimed Short-Thread Led.
We'll shelter on that planet up ahead.
Short-Thread Led took control of the ship and started to steer it towards Skull. As the Cutting Snark entered Skull's atmosphere and sailed near the planet's rocks, Short-Thread Led could only contemplate the beautiful sight of Skull, but his contemplation was interrupted when he saw a familiar thatched cottage with jet engines.
Well, I'll be scuppered,
said a surprised Short-Thread Led.
It looks like them there swabs from the spaceship Paradox.
And it was indeed the paradox. Short-Thread Led turned the Cutting Snark's steering wheel and set a course for the jagged rocks that the paradox had landed beside. Inside the paradox itself, Roger and Sproggle were having a bit of an argument. They couldn't decide whether Sproggle had led the crew to the right planet or not.
What do you mean, shaped like a cross, Sproggle?
Queried Roger.
This planet doesn't look like a cross to me, and I should know. I'm the pilot, remember?
You don't see, Roger,
Sproggle answered back.
You never do.
I never see. That's rich coming from you,
snapped Roger.
And what if it is shaped like a cross?
But Sproggle was adamant that he'd got the right planet.
Spot, mark, and X,
he stated. Leica went to break up the argument. He means X marks the spot, Roger, said Leica wisely. You know, where treasure's hidden? At least it's always like that in storybooks. It was at that moment that Sir Squeakalot hovered up, holding a tray of cups and saucers. He was taking orders for who wanted his famous Galactian tea.
Cup of tea, Mr. Sproggle?
He asked. He then turned to Leica.
According to my databanks, Miss Leica, this isn't the right planet for treasure.
But it is a treasure spot,
Sproggle butted in.
None of yous believe Sproggle, but Sproggle's going to find it.
And he stormed off. As Sproggle went to open the paradox's door, Roger took this opportunity to tease him.
Careful, Sproggle, it's very dark out there,
he teased. Sproggle simply rolled his eyes and, being his usual clumsy self, fell out of the paradox onto the rock-hard surface of Skull, causing Roger and Leica to laugh their heads off. He then marched towards the cave that the paradox had landed near, muttering to himself about treasure. After a while, Sproggle hadn't returned, and Leica was beginning to worry. We shouldn't have laughed at him, Roger, said Leica worryingly. I'd better go and see if he's all right. But Roger became confused as Leica went off to join Sproggle in the cave.
What?
Questioned Roger.
You don't believe there's treasure out there too, do you, Leica?
And when Leica was out of his eyesight, all Roger could do was scratch his head, puzzled. No sooner after Leica joined Sproggle in his treasure hunt did the Cutting Snark dock near the rocks opposite the ones the paradox was on. Land ahoy! Land ahoy! squawked Ting Lizzie. Show up, you blasted bird! shouted Short-Fred Led. Being the talkative type of parrot, Ting Lizzie wasn't a favourite of Led's. We don't want that Captain Frost to know we're here! Short-Fred Led then looked down below. The cutting snark was manned by robots who worked in the ship's bowels. Led wanted people to think he had a real crew, so he always shouted commands at the robots, like any normal pirate would with his crew, and this time was no exception. Prepare the cannons for a surprise attack, commanded Short-Fred Led. At his word, the cannons turned to face the paradox. And fire! barked Short-Fred Led. Again acting at his command, the cutting snark's cannons fired every beam it had across Skull's seas towards the paradox. Inside the ship itself, Sir Squeakalot had heard the beams being fired. He knew he had to alert the rest of the crew.
Down, everyone!
shouted Squeaky. Roger, Isambard and Captain Thrice ducked down a split second before the beams destroyed the paradox. Had the rest of the crew survived? A vindictive Short-Fred Led certainly didn't think so. He grinned, satisfied that he had outdone Dr. Agon by destroying the paradox. Leica and Sproggle heard the commotion from inside the cave and went to see what had happened. All they could find was the wreckage of the paradox, and nothing else.
They're gone! Oh, gone!
wept an upset and angry Sproggle.
It must have been Dr. Agon who did this!
But Leica thought otherwise. She picked up a pile of what looked like dust and sniffed it. I don't think so, Sproggle, said Leica. This smells like old-fashioned gunpowder. Gunpowder? That could only mean one person.
Short-Fred Led!
exclaimed Sproggle. Got it in one, went a voice that belonged to Captain Thrice's walking stick. She picked herself up from the 14 tons of rubble she had been buried in.
Walking stick!
cried Leica.
What happened?
The cutting snark blew the paradox to pieces, explained Walking Stick as Leica picked her up from the rubble. We survived, but Led came ashore for the others and locked them up in the cutting snark's dungeon. Leica was now determined that her fellow crew members be saved. Come on, Sproggle, she cried. We've got to rescue them! Despite Sproggle's protests, Leica spread her wings and picked him up. With Sproggle and Walking Stick in tow, Leica flew as fast as she could across the sea and towards the departing cutting snark. The rescue was on, and it was now or never. The 3 rescuers came to a window on the pirate ship. Leica peered inside and could see Captain Thrice, Roger, Isambard and Sir Squeakalot locked up in the cutting snark's dungeon. It looked as dark and as damp as Leica remembered it being when she had been a prisoner in there a long time ago. Soon, Leica, Sproggle and Walking Stick were up on the deck of the cutting snark. They had to sneak very carefully across, or be carried in Walking Stick's case, and getting to the dungeon without Short-Fred Led finding them. Luckily, he was too busy hanging around on the plank and singing to himself, so he didn't notice any trespassers one little bit. Thanks to her time as a prisoner, Leica knew the cutting snark's interior off by heart, so she was able to find the ship's dungeon easily. Along with Sproggle and Walking Stick, of course. They came to the dungeon door and Leica opened it. Captain Thrice was there, but he seemed hesitant to be rescued, and it was soon clear why. No, Leica, don't! warned Captain Thrice, but it was too late. Leica tried to walk through the doorway and was forced back by something electrical. It was a force field that Short-Fred Led had set up, and it was shaped like a spider's web. Leica got up off her feet and was about to think of another plan when something caught Sproggle's eye.
Leica, look!
Sproggle called. He was pointing to an object positioned above the door, which looked like a small, metallic, electricity-generating spider.
This must be what's generating the force field, observed Leica.
But what is it? The object seemed all too familiar to Sproggle.
It's the Black Swat.
He quivered, shaking in fear. They say that if the Black Swat gets you, explained Walking Stick wisely, you're stuck until you rot.
Or at least until its owner says so,
roared a familiar pirate-like voice. Shortfreg Led had caught the would-be rescuers unawares. He grabbed Sproggle with his hook and pointed his cutlass at him.
I should have known you'd come down here to rescue your friends, he said. And I did know. That's why I came down here.
Led then held his hand out towards the Black Swat. With a call of,
"Come on, my little brat,"
it dropped into his hand like a hot cake from a baker's oven. He then hid it in his jacket pocket, where he was sure nobody could steal it.
"Right, you scurvy lot,"
shouted Shortfreg Led to his prisoners, both old and new.
"It's plank walking time."
On the Cutting Snark's deck, Shortfreg Led mock-examined his prisoners.
"Now,"
he said slyly,
"who shall we start with? I know, my old matey Sproggle."
Again, Led grabbed the whimpering Sproggle with his hook. But, as he considered himself a considerable pirate, he allowed Sproggle to make a decision.
"Of course, I could always allow you to return to the crow's nest."
Sproggle looked up at the crow's nest in fear. In the bravest tone of voice he could muster, he told the pirate,
"Never!" "Then down the plank, you little worm!"
roared Shortfreg Led, pushing Sproggle towards the end of the plank.
"No!"
cried Leica.
Leave him alone, you piratical coward!
demanded Isambard.
"Take me instead,"
pleaded a stern Captain Thrice. But Shortfreg Led was only moments away from victory, and he wasn't going to let anyone else take Sproggle's place.
"Sorry, Captain Thrice,"
said a devious Shortfreg Led,
"but I wouldn't want you to miss seeing Sproggle play with the sharks."
Sproggle looked below him. There were indeed sharks circling the waters, and they looked hungry for a meal fit for a navigator, or rather, a navigator fit for a meal. Leica had to think of something, and fast. Which, luckily enough, she did.
"Another step and you'll never know where the treasure is,"
Leica called out.
"Sproggle will take its secrets with him."
The mere mention of treasure perked Shortfreg Led's ears up.
"Treasure?"
he snorted. "That's right," explained Leica. "At the centre of this planet is a cliff, and in the cliff there's a cave, and in the cave there's treasure." Now Led was intrigued.
"And there's really treasure in that cave?"
asked Led. "Oh, there's treasure all right," lied Leica. "More than you could ever possibly stow on the Cutting Snark." Leica needed to say no more. The Shortfreg Led was already steering the ship back towards the cliff. Being the dim-witted type, he had easily fallen for Leica's ruse. Once the Cutting Snark had docked, Shortfreg Led marched towards the cliff cave, leaving the Paradox crew standing outside it, still in chains.
"You stay here and be good,"
snarled Shortfreg Led.
"Tin Lizzie'll look after you. She may not look like much, but one move and you'll be sorry."
And with that he went into the cave. Tin Lizzie's blood-red eyes stared at the crew as she kept watch.
"Nobody move! Nobody move!"
she squawked. Even though it seemed that Sproggle had led the Paradox and its crew on a wild goose chase that resulted in the ship's destruction, Captain Thrice couldn't help but feel sorry for the orphan navigator. "Poor old Sproggle," sighed Captain Thrice. "And you didn't even find any treasure." Sproggle, however, seemed more confident than usual. "Sproggle didn't he?" said Sproggle cunningly as he rummaged around his sleeves. He thought he'd hidden a treasure that he and Leica had found in the cave in his sleeves, but he must have dropped it. Fortunately, Leica had picked it up along the way. "Is this what you're looking for, Sproggle?" asked Leica, holding out the treasure. It was silver and resembled a round flower sitting on top of a gold ring. "It may be small," Leica said, giving the treasure to Sproggle, "but at least it's a real treasure." "And what good's a treasure, real or not," snarked Walking Stick, "when you've lost your home and you're all chained up?" That was when the treasure, like the flower it resembled, opened its petals. A blinding lavender-coloured beam shone from the crystalline side, bathing the crew in its luminescence. They had never seen anything like it, and probably never would again, until such a time when they would eventually find Lavender Castle. "It is a real treasure," remarked Captain Fries. "A treasure from Lavender Castle." As he spoke, the mysterious magic of the beam vanished away the crew's chains. Poor Ting Lizzie could do nothing but squawk as she was frozen by the beam, but the effects would eventually wear off. The crew's attention then turned to the debris of the paradox as the beam cleared it away. Then, like a phoenix from its ashes, the ship was rebuilt in a matter of moments. It was as if the paradox had never been destroyed. As the final piece of the ship's bow was put into place by the beam's magic, Sproggle looked up to the sky, almost like he was in a trance. He could see a lavender star in the sky. As it flew away, he just had to tell the others what he had seen. "I see Lavender Castle that way," said Sproggle in a dreamlike tone. To this day, nobody knows what the star actually was, but there are those who say it was a pointer towards Lavender Castle itself. Anyway, the Paradox crew decided to escape as quickly as they could before Shortthread Led came back, but Captain Thrice held back a bit as he was at the entrance of the cave. "Come on, my little pet," he whispered to something that he was holding. Leica turned around, curious as to what was going on. "Who are you talking to, Captain?" asked Leica. Nobody," said a suspicious Captain Thrice, and he went to join the others at the Paradox. As the ship soared through the space skies once more, following the lavender-coloured star, Roger decided to look out of the window just to prove Sproggle wrong. But to his surprise, it was he who was proved wrong.
"Well, I'll be a kangaroo's uncle!"
exclaimed Roger.
"Sproggle was right after all. This planet really does look like a cross. A skull and crossbones."
That was why the planet was called Skull. Sproggle, meanwhile, was worried that Shortthread Led would catch up to them. "We haven't seen the last of Shortthread Led," he was quivering. But Captain Thrice was quick to comfort Sproggle. "That may be so, Sproggle," began Captain Thrice, "but it'll take Shortthread Led a long time to catch up to us." He gave a chuckle, which gave way to a hearty laugh. "A very long time," he laughed. Back on Skull, the space pirate angrily marched out of the cave. Or rather, he would have done had he not walked into another spider's web-shaped force field. He checked his pockets for the Black Swat, but they were empty. The spider-shaped device had disappeared. It was now perched above the cave's entrance, generating the force field. What Shortthread Led didn't know was that Captain Thrice had stolen the Black Swat when Led wasn't looking, and told it to weave its electric web around the cave entrance. "Help! Let me out!" he commanded in a tone similar to one that a child might have if they were sent to their room without any supper. The Black Swat, however, simply ignored him, and Ting Lizzie had decided she wasn't going to be much help to him either. She just laughed at her master, who sighed as he was left to think of a new plan to both get out of the cave and capture the crew of the Paradox.